Welcome, puzzlers, to Margin Time, the only podcast that can get you a perfect clear in 30 minutes or your pizza is free. Um, I am Trashboat with a wonderful producer, Juicy. And today we have a special episode. We are interviewing the creators of the NES homebrew games, Miroh Jr. and La Patifferie. MT and Wendel. Give him a round of applause. But feel free to introduce yourself, folks. Go right ahead. Say hello or something.
Good. So I'm MT. I do art and story on most of these games. I've got a background in teaching and art education and stuff like that I try to put into these, and I try to make games as polished and as fun as I can that everyone can enjoy, especially kids.
And I'm Wendel, and I don't know why I decided to make NES games for fun, and I've been doing since 2020.
Ooh,
Usually, I'm just a programmer for boring stuff on the day, and then at night I do these games.
ooh, okay. Programmer. All right. So, I guess we're gonna first maybe do this a little bit differently than what we normally do because what we normally do is we focus on one game. So we'll probably do 30 minutes where we talk about maybe more serious stuff like your life story, if you had a programming degree or something, how you got so smart enough to make puzzle games, so on and so forth. And then maybe save the rest of it for looking at the games and the gameplay. We will try to maybe cut down the more serious part a little bit so we can have more time to sort of look at the games and focus on those. But I guess first thing talking about Miroh Jr. or no, let's scratch that. Let's sort of talk about you guys first. How did I guess the team Miroh Jr. come together?
So, like I said, like Wendell said, he was started making games around 2020 for the NES, and I saw one of his games. He was doing this like game a month jam. He was knocking out a game a month, which for the NES is ridiculous. As even the simplest projects usually take people a lot longer. And he had this game. It was a co-op puzzle game that was like a garden themed Tetris clone of some sort. And I reached out to him and I was just like, "Hey, I love these games that you're making. They're wonderful." And as I tend to do sometimes, just like maybe we could beef up like the graphics and stuff, and I could work with you on something, and we could get something into the Nest Dev compo. And then that was 3 years ago, and we've made the made should be in quotes there. We've made 6 games since then because each year we start working on one game, and then either like a week or a month or 2 months away from the competition deadline, we realize we're not going to hit the deadline and we stop working and go to another game. And then the
Okay,
second game gets finished and the first game kind of gets put on the back burner, and that's what we've got so far.
okay, no, that's hey, fully fair. We have plenty of folks in the audience who have started a game jam game and not quite finished it, but that's really good to know. So, I guess NC, let's sort of talk about your background as like an artist, because that does seem to be your primary focus with these projects. You do the graphics, the arts. I assume other maybe stuff people may not see as art, like maybe I guess the color design, things of that nature. What's how like do you have any I guess non game dev art experience and do you have any, I guess, other game dev art experience that is not NES homebrew?
Oh yeah, so I'm an art teacher, so I teach like graphic design and visual art, sometimes to the high school level. I've done a lot of elementary and kindergarten art teaching. So my degrees in art education, which that path, I went to a university that was very fine arts oriented and definitely just like anytime I was doing illustration or more commercial oriented art, there was a heavy shunning and discouraging of it. So that influenced my first kind of few years of art there, where I was working on like I don't know, like oil portraits and stuff like that, and trying to do like exhibitions and stuff, and didn't really enjoy it at all. And I found that in the high school, this has been like in the late 90s, I was doing like NES ROM hacks for fun, graphics hacks and stuff. And
Wow.
anytime I ended up like stressed with something later, just like any time in my life, stress would kind of kick up. I'd end up jumping back to NES graphics. There'd be like 4 or 5 years between, and I'd jump back to it, and I'd eventually realize that, hey, this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing the illustration for NES games. I enjoy making graphics for the NES. And art's job in life should be to produce enjoyment and not stress. So about 10 years ago, I just went whole hog into NES stuff and stopped using it as like a backup hobby or whatever, and became main hobby, I guess you'd say.
Oh my gosh. That's so beautiful. Sorry. And it is just really good that you sort of found how, like, I guess how happy or how much joy it brought you and decided to really just go all in instead of maybe just treating it as like maybe a small hobby or just, a small thing to do just because, right?
It took me too long to make that decision. I think I'd have been happier if I'd made that decision 10 years earlier.
I know,
I
but I
could.
mean, some people go their entire lives and never make that decision. So
Mm.
that's, again, we probably would all be in a better place had you made that decision earlier, but to have made it at all, wonderful, magnifique, no notes.
Well, thank you.
Um, so Wendell, I would like to ask you, I guess, sort of, your background and like, I guess, how did you start getting into coding? Was like game dev your first experience with coding? And maybe how did you go from whatever coding you were doing to NES dev? Let's, I guess, start with, I guess, if you have any educational background in like coding or computer science or something of that nature.
So I guess everything started like when I was a kid, like 11, 12. And I came from a very poor family, so I didn't have computers around. But I was already curious about them, so I started finding computer books on libraries. If you see my notebooks from the time, lots of them have some code scribbled on them. When I when I finally got a computer, I was like 15. My cousins gave me their old computer, very old, like really archaic computer,
Like a Windows
and
95 or something?
way earlier, like
Whoa!
DOS 5, like DOS 5.
Oh,
It
wow.
black
Okay.
and white screen,
Oh,
one
yeah. Okay.
megabyte of RAM,
That's, that's, yeah, okay. That is very old.
floppy drive,
And
and then it had only a few games on it, and at some point I broke the drive, and then I had to code my own silly little games for me to play with my brother and sister, and that was going on. Then I managed to enter university, so I did computer science and eventually mastership. Yeah, I don't know the English word. That's
a
mastership.
master's degree, I think.
Master degree, yeah, in
Yeah.
computer science as well, and started working with programming, but not game related, like just boring programming. Except during my computer science course, I ended up making a Game Boy Advance homebrew with a couple of friends.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we lost the source code.
Oh, man.
I guess I have the ROM somewhere still, but it was only that. Then working programming, then came the Nintendo DS. I played with a bit of home homebrew for Nintendo DS. I made a Google Maps like offline for it because at the time people didn't have. Not many people had smartphones. I guess.
Wow.
I guess a friend had an iPhone, the first iPhone. I had the DS, so I made a small Google Maps offline for it
That's impressive.
with the maps around the city, at least my local city,
Okay.
and that's it. Um, Skipping to NES development, it was like I said, 2020. I came across some article about this website that was released that was a book for NES coding, online book. It's called book.famicom party.
That's
And
a funny name.
yeah, and I was like, wait, is that easy to make a NES game, relatively speaking? Well, it's the pandemics. Why not? At the same time, there was a local game development group that was making a monthly game jam. Every month they made this game jam. And at first I was trying to make games like modern games like Unity, Unreal,
Mm-hmm.
just for fun. It's like, try this. But when I came across that article, I decided, wait, I could try learning NASDAV, NESDAV, while trying to make games for the jam. Like there's a goal. Like I have 1 month to make a game, a cooperative game. 1 month to make a game that uses colors. 1 month to make a game, uh, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. You, and I was doing like along the whole year, I guess 1 or 2 years, one game every month for the NES. Then I started reducing the game jam ended up not occurring anymore because people were abused. So sometimes
Ah.
only one game was being made, so they stopped making them.
Ah.
But then I started participating in other more spaced game jams like the Ludum Dare. The Ludum Dare, I keep trying. It occurs twice a year, so
Oh, yeah, we've had I guess some folks around here who also do Ludum Dare, like
mhm.
Hacksaw Unit or Kirk Ludum Dare alum who does a lot of those. Um okay, no, that's very impressive because like I did do a little bit of research and found that you unlike MT who seems to have been like on NES dev for like most of their life. You did not start on NES. You were like you had some stuff in Unity like Base 6 and Esposito, right? But a lot of your NES dev stuff is like very impressive. Just to sort of go through some stuff. You have a shmup game where your chip will change randomly mid-game. You have a rhythm game for NES called Radio. It has a Toho song and something else. Um, Rogue Lore was one that stuck out to me because it was like interesting and pretty also kind of funny. And like Fire Rebellion, which kind of almost is like it's very good and also kind of looks like almost like maybe an early SNES game instead of like an NES game. Like it's really well made. Have you ever considered branching out to something other than NES, right? Is there any particular benefits or like reason that you and even MT, you can probably chime in on this too. Is there any reason to stay on NES and to not maybe try homebrew for something else like maybe the Mega Drive or the SNES? I don't know, maybe PlayStation or something.
sometimes I have game ideas that graphically would suffer too much to be fulfilled on the NES. Um, and when those come up, it's tempting to jump onto another platform. I don't know where I'd go. I don't have that much of a connection to other ones. Like I'd love to do like Neo Geo Pocket Color, but the thing is that the NES homebrew community is so strong that when we make something, there's immediate feedback, and people li- like to talk about it, and it's really like enriching. And even outside of like the technical restraints, which are really fun to work within, the fact that that community is so strong, I think, is what keeps me kind of tied to the NES. Um, but I'm sure they'd support it if we made like a TurboGrafx or PC Engine game or something like that, you know. So it's tempting, but it's like every time, I don't know, this is so comforting to me. It's like every time I'm kind of tempted by it, I'm a little more tempted to just do something else on the NES.
Uh, as for me, I also mentioned that I like the restrictions because they use let us to have to be more creative around it. Because when you have like a unit, you can just drop some assets, then you have everything ready for you. But on the NES, it's you have to take care of each and every detail. You can polish it. And also there is a bit of a selfish reason for me to stay on the NES. It's like when there is Ludundari, I have to make a game in 2 or 3 days. If the graphic is not the best graphics, it can be excused by, oh, it's for the NES. We all
that's
know the NES, it's just a few pixels,
it's that's no,
only for colors.
that's genius. That seems like the game developer version of what I do is like when I play a fighting game, I tend to play very low tier characters. So when I lose, I can be like, oh well, I had a crappy character. What else? What else do you expect from me, right? So I see
Yeah,
the
I
vision.
can relate to that wholly as well. Like,
Yeah.
as an artist, I get praised, a bit for my NES stuff. But it's like if I were to put this stuff on mobile or on Steam or something without the context of it being an NES game, it'd be like one drop in a million games. It wouldn't get anywhere near the attention that we get here. So it's nice to be kind of more comfortable. Like, I don't want to say big fish in a small pond, but it's nice to be a little bit of a big fish in a small pond.
No.
You're not compared to as much. There's less expectations, and it's easier to exceed those expectations. So I relate to that strongly as well.
All right. So I guess let's actually sort of try to get into Miro Jr. and we can probably get some gameplay going while we start to talk about this. But I guess Miro Jr. is a bit of a spiritual sequel to Miro, the sort of NES game that sort of does the same thing or has a similar gameplay, but is only with one player. What sort of was the, I guess, thought process behind taking this and making it into a two-player game, and then changing what mechanics you did change from, you know, vanilla Miro to Miro Jr.?
I think uh, I think the push for two player was pretty big on my part. So, like I mentioned earlier, each year when we're working for the competition, we're usually working on one game, and then we transition to another. And Wendell, with the way that Wendell tackles like game jams and stuff, uh, while we were working on our Nestef compo game, suddenly he's just like, "Oh, I also made this other game," and he showed us Miro, and I started playing it, and it was hard, but I really loved two things about it. One, the whole time I was playing it, I was like, "This would be awesome for my kid and I to play together," and two, Wendell was doing this trick which NES graphics are restricted, not to get too technical on it, but there's like an overlapping trick that was letting the Minotaur walk behind the walls, and I was like, we could push that trick a lot further too. So suddenly, I felt really sheepish pitching it because we were right in the middle. We had put a lot of work into this other game, and I was like, actually, I really love Miroh. Would y'all be cool with us stopping working on the other game and remaking Miroh? And luckily, the response was at least a reluctant positive. This was like five weeks before the deadline, I guess.
Oh my
for
goodness.
the competition.
Just out of curiosity, what was the game that you guys sort of halted to make Miroh?
It was a remake of another one of Wendel's Game Jam games. So I don't know if you tried out 5 Star from his itch page, but it's like a delivery themed puzzle platformer. You kind of carry delivery boxes and deliver them to houses. So we were neck deep into scope creep, turning that into something more, and we got a lot of it done. So hopefully we'll see that in some form in the future as well.
Okay. All right. So I guess what sort of caused you to make some of the changes with regards. Well, one, here's a big thing, right? With original Miroh, you do have the Minotaur who's trapped by King Tetramino, and you have to do both, right? You have to both navigate the Minotaur through the maze and manage the Tetris parts of it. How did you guys, I guess, come to the decision on splitting that up into a 2-player job? And I guess how were there any challenges with, I guess, making that change? Or are there any challenges? Because this is still sort of like in a bit of a development phase.
Yeah, we're definitely still struggling with that. But I think we've got a good solution. We've got a good solution in the pipeline. So hopefully it'll be a stronger 2-player game in the near future. But with it, the original goal, my original goal when I was pitching it, is that I want to play this with my 4 or 5-year-old child. And so I was imagining myself playing kind of a relaxed game of a relaxed game of Tetris while she's running around as the unicorn collecting fruit and stuff. So I wanted to make sure that there was no possible fail state that she could be responsible for.
Okay.
So that explains a lot of what's going on here, because with the original, as soon as the Minotaur would run out of energy, it would be a game fail state. So game over, and you'd have to start over. With this one, when the unicorn runs out of energy, she just gets tired, and and we actually, if we had even one more day on the deadline, we had a different scoring system in place so that you must have energy for any score to accumulate. So our main goal with the updates to the score is that when you collect fruit, you need to get points. So that way the unicorn's also contributing to the score. But also, if the unicorn runs out of energy, then you'll have no points, and the higher the unicorn's energy is, the higher of a score point multiplier there will be. So that way, ultimately, if you fail because the unicorn is not collecting fruit, it's not really the unicorn player's fault, because no matter what, the Tetris player can keep playing Tetris.
Yeah.
until there's some fruit open for the unicorn to get. So that way there'll be more stakes and more involvement for the unicorn player. But the person who's dropping the marshmallows is the one who's ultimately responsible for failure, which I think that'll achieve the balance we're hoping for.
Okay. As we're looking at this game, this is very this is very colorful, very vibrant. And this unicorn is, I gotta say, pretty detailed for an NES game. what was, I guess, maybe the challenge? I guess let's say for both of you, right? Since we got both of you here, what was maybe the hardest part in what you contributed to this game?
Wendell, I'll let you start that one.
I guess the hardest for me was because of the deadline for the competition. We were running around, make everything work in time, and mostly juggling the assets because the competition, the NASDAQ compo, you have to make the game fit 64 kilobytes.
Oh,
Usually you can have larger ROMs, but for the competition, because the end result is a bigger ROM that contains all the people's games, each game needs to be smaller. So our game needs to fit in 64 kilobytes. So I have to juggle the assets around so they fit in banks, in data banks. I won't enter in details right now because it's some specific NAS development details, but that was the hardest part for me. Like I need to find new compression algorithms and so on.
Yeah, juggling assets was a big problem with us. Well, with me on the graphics end as well. So as Wendell said, we only have 64 kilobytes to fit everything in, which it's not the smallest NES games, but it's
this
on the smaller end of NES.
This
games.
is 64 kilobytes?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
So the NES can do things like you've got like Mario and Luigi. They use the same graphics, but they have different colors, obviously.
Oh yeah.
So I was building it with a plan on like, okay, so I'll reuse this and I'll reuse this. But then I started building all the different stages. And then in the background of the stage, there's like, you can see Marshmallow Mountain in the background, which we have an animation plan for it that we didn't get in, where it actually spits out the marshmallow cluster that's coming out. But you can see Marshmallow Mountain in the background of every stage. And that's kind of like a foreshadowing effect. But sometimes Marshmallow Mountain is dark on light. Sometimes it's medium on dark, like in terms of color value. As a result, what ended up happening is that suddenly I needed to duplicate. I needed to duplicate all the miniature versions of the pieces, which took up a whole strip of our graphics data for that stage. So we weren't able to reuse it. So then what would end up happening is we'd end up working and I'd be able to reuse a lot less than I thought I could. And then suddenly I'd go back and I'd revise a stage so that I could reuse more, or or just prioritizing assets. Like we were close to deadline. I had 2 stages that I hadn't done yet, and suddenly I had an idea to change the theme of one of the stages. So I went back and redid that stage instead of working on the next 2 because I have no self-control.
Common problem.
Yeah. But as for technical stuff, one thing I like to draw attention to there is the way that the unicorn walks behind the walls, as I had mentioned before. In the original Miroh, that wasn't that big of a problem because the Minotaur was fairly narrow compared to the corridor that was being walked in, but I had added this huge tail to the back of her. And suddenly, when you're walking around the wall, that tail was getting clipped by the wall in a nonsensical way. So we spent quite a bit working out how to get that to work, and we finally did. And it's one of those things that like I'm really proud of, but the vast majority of people would not even notice it.
I kind of didn't notice either, and I sort of like as part of the little research I said I did. I played like a couple of Windows old games, like I played Miroh. I thought sort of the way that I guess it did walk around the walls was interesting, but I don't have the NES game dev knowledge to really understand how cool of a thing it is you're doing there. Right.
Right. So, yeah. We're kind of just like strutting our stuff for the other people who do this there. But it ends up with a nice, it's nice and polished in the end. And, it'd be worse if we tried to do it and it didn't quite work. You know what I mean? Because if it didn't quite work, then people would notice it, and that'd be the thing to try to avoid. So,
Yeah.
so we got hung up on that one for a while.
Yeah. All right. So I guess were there any, anything that was left on the cutting room floor, right? Any ideas for like, say, oh, it would be so cool if like the unicorn shot a laser out, and you decide, as an example, right? But were there any ideas that you kind of thought about doing in like maybe early drafts of the Miroh sequel, and then ended up just not following through on?
So for me, well, overall, first let's knock out of the way the stuff that we had planned that we didn't get in. That's definitely going to be in there by the end. Which is we have a visual world map. We have one additional stage, a boss fight, which the boss fight is Miroh Jr. It's the titular Miroh Jr. who the son of King Miroh from the last one, as we retroactively, I guess the last one retroactively has become Miroh Senior now.
Mhm.
And then a few small polish animations like the mountain spitting out the marshmallow clusters in the back,
Mhm.
and I think a couple of other things like that. Other than that, there wasn't anything that I've really pitched that I thought would be great. But if it's stuff that's like I had a cool idea, but I knew it'd be out of scope, I thought it'd be cool to remake the original Miroh and do it like a Donkey Kong Classics double cart or something like that. But that's the kind of idea I would definitely not suggest following through with.
Okay. I guess let me sort of go back to focusing on the team, because it was sort of a question that I meant to ask and didn't quite get into in the first part. You guys are Korea, Brazil, Milwaukee, three very different parts of the globe. How did you guys sort of come together? I guess not just Miroh and La Patifferie, but I guess how did you guys come together as like a game dev team?
Yeah, I forgot to mention Jordan earlier. I should have. Raftronaut does all the music for our games. Absolutely talented musician there. He's currently at MGC, so he wasn't able to make this stream as he's promoting the Storied Sword, an NES game that he did the graphics and the music on, and is kickstarted at the moment. But I'm pretty sure I messaged Wendel out of the blue, and then at some point in time, Jordan had messaged me, if I recall correctly, or I'd given him some feedback on some pixel art, as he was, he's a well-accomplished musician, but he was just getting into pixel art a few years ago, and then we ended up just talking quite a lot. Wendell and I, we've worked on a lot of games together. But then when we were working on La Patifferie, I had fallen so in love with the characters that I was creating with that game that I really wanted them to have like fighting game style theme songs attached to them. Like Guile's song, because it's Guile's song. You hear Guile's song, you think of Guile. You see Guile, you think of Guile's song.
Yeah.
And I kind of went to Jordan. I was like, hey, I would love for this to happen if you don't mind joining us on this. And he was totally down for it. He's been working with us on all the games we've done since then, Miroh Jr. as well, and everything there.
All right, and I guess Jordan isn't here, but could you maybe speak to what sort of maybe limitations on the end of music for the NES, right? Like it can be pretty impressive, but it's still in the NES. There's still like the technical stuff. I'm sure there's still probably like maybe memory, storage stuff, so you don't brush up against that 64K limit. I guess, is there anything you can speak to about that in his absence?
The NES has a limited number of tracks. I think one of the big things that we come up with sometimes is like when you have sound effects and the sound effects not interfering with the music, because when the sound effect is playing, the music's not playing. And I remember being really worried about like the marshmallow clearing sound effect, which would be happening often, or or the marshmallow dropping sound effect, kind of killing the music. But Jordan's a total pro on that. I brought it up. I was like, oh, I don't know if we should do this because I'm worried it's going to do this. And he's just like, oh, let me just try it and try out. It was wonderful. So super lucky to have him on music.
All
Oh
right.
yeah, I remembered something. There was some issue where two different stuffs used to happen at the same time, and each one had their own sound effect, and the sound effects combined would sound weird. And Jordan did a thing like he managed to create a new sound effect that sounded nice to mean the two different things happen at the same time. So we had sound A, sound B, and a new sound that combined A and B in a nicer way than if I played them together. That was something that happened.
Okay, that's very very impressive to do that. So okay, I guess we have is there anything else you want to say about Miroh Jr.? Because I do think we may be about to change to La Patifferie in a few seconds. Anything else that maybe that we haven't touched on that you would like people to know or to see about this game?
Nothing off the top of my mind. If people who are watching the stream like what they see, they can check out what we've got. If they wanna hang tight, then at some point in time we'll come back around and finish it up and maybe put out a little bit of a stronger title as well too.
All right. It's okay. Let's go and I guess we'll have some time to let production sort of switch up. All right. But I guess while we're doing that, describe give me like the elevator pitch for La Patifferie.
Well, it's a match 3. So La Patifferie is a match 3 cookie themed puzzle game with a fighting game inspired presentation and aesthetic, which it's not totally unusual. What do we have, like a Super Puzzle Fighter? That's the name of Capcom's, right?
Yeah, Super Puzzle Fighter Teacher. Well,
Yeah. So that kind of crossover is there in other games as well. So it's kind of like that. We don't actually see much of the fighting game aesthetic with the demo because the demo has all the dialogue kind of not accessible. But we do hear music in there, and that it's a little different from other match 3s in that you have cookies coming down in 3 flavors, which are represented by color, 3 shapes: a heart, a bar, and a round cookie, normal cookie, and with 3 decorations, the type of chocolate on them. So you have chocolate chip cookies, chocolate stripe, like a fudge stripe cookie, and then like a dipped cookie that's like half dipped in chocolate. To make a set, you have to make sure that they share at least 2 of those traits. So you could have 3 green cookies that are also hearts, but they could have different decorations, or 3 striped cookies that are also orange, but they could have different shapes. So it gets a little tricky because of that.
okay, and this is like I guess it's something I feel I probably should have asked earlier, but I guess do you and this is open to both of y'all, you NT and Wendel. Did y'all have any, I guess, games that maybe you enjoyed, like either as children or earlier in your youth that maybe inspired this game, or even any other game that you may have done, like Miroh or something of that nature?
Wendell, I think the matching aspect is from a card game, right?
Oh yeah, like
Palamedes?
it's a card game named Set.
Oh,
Actually, where in Set you have cards with 4 features. That's color, number, shape, and feeling. And in that game, you need to find sets of 3 cards where for each feature, they are all the same or they are all different. When I started making the prequel for La Patifferie, I had the idea to use the exact same mechanics. It was for one of those game jams. But when I started making the actual game, I felt the set mechanic was too confused for it. Then I had this glimpse of making the matching simpler. Like, they have to be the same, at least 2 of 3 features, and that was it. Other than that, I was just inspired by any generic match 3 games mixed with like Tetris, because the pieces fall instead of you having a board that you flip pieces around.
Yeah, the first game that Wendel's referencing there is called Trinka, and it's another one of Wendel's Game Jam games.
Yeah.
And the icons that are dropping, they had kind of small, hard to see shapes on them.
Yeah, they were kind of like
and-
dice or something. That's why I had guessed.
Yeah,
that,
they look a little like dice. That makes sense. I'm trying to remember it now, but I don't remember if he came to me about remaking Trinka or if I came to him about remaking Trinka. But we started remaking Trinka, and immediately it was just like, I get that kind of, I'd been nerd sniped into that itch. I'm like, okay, with the NES graphics restrictions, what theme could I apply to this where you would have 3 separate traits that could be represented independently and in every possible combination? And I was actually really reluctant to go the cookie route because, cookie themed and like pastry theme for puzzle games is so overdone. Even on the NES, you've got Yoshi's Cookie, which is probably, I don't know if that's the NES. It's one of the NES.
Yeah. Well, it's been on
Tetris.
multiple platforms. It's been on NES and SNES, maybe Game. Kayat's probably gonna shout at me for this because he's like the Yoshi's Cookie fan here. But yeah.
Yeah, I saw y'all have a dedicated Yoshi's Cookie channel in your server, so I was like, should I mention Yoshi's Cookie? And
No,
should I
feel free.
or should I not?
Definitely mention Yoshi's Cookie.
Yeah. But
yeah. There's cookies theme.
that, I was really reluctant to bring in the cookies, Candy Crush and all that. But I put the graphics together. I was like, well, I'm just going to test it. Can I get cookies looking good? Like, can I draw cookies and get them to look good with these restrictions? And I drew them. I was like, hey, they look fine. I like them. So I pitched that to Wendel. And then, we have 64 kilobytes for a game because this was originally for the competition, although we've since decided to expand this a bit and release it as a standalone title instead. But we were working under the assumption of 64 kilobytes, and I was like, well, we've got 64 kilobytes left and the game's done. Done, like the graphics for the gameplay.
Yeah,
done.
it's sort of in a bit of a basic shippable state.
Yeah. Or at least like I was done in terms of like the assets I needed to make for it, So I was like, what if we use the rest of the 64K and make it like a fighting game, and I can design a bunch of characters. And that's pretty much where it went. So games that inspired me on that aspect, hugely into like Fatal Fury. I love like the Southtown storyline and the Southtown city being rich with characters, and even La Patifferie is reusing a character that we have in another game we're working on. So I'm trying to use it as kind of a building block to build a set of characters that we can then reuse for other games, and a city that we can reuse for future settings if we need to. But then in terms of puzzle games, back in like the Neo Rage X days, I played a lot of like the like Magical Drop and like character-based puzzle, like versus puzzle games. But My wife and I, when we were younger, we had a fem clone with Tinkin Tetris on it, which has a co-op mode, and
Oh,
we got a lot of play out of that. So it's not in the demo, but it is in the works. We do have a co-op mode planned for La Patifferie with one large pan where two players are simultaneously moving around it, being able to drop their cookies wherever they like.
oh wow. That's gonna be fun. Co-op modes are really interesting to do. I guess in the terms of like it being a character, sort of a character focused versus puzzle game, right? Do the characters like have any sort of special gameplay differences? Like, do they have maybe like a different drop set, or do the cookies look different? Do they like affect gameplay in any way, or are they just like sort of cool characters to play around with?
Well, we've got a story mode as you go through. In the story mode, you are playing as the main character, and you're kind of meeting everyone along the way. And each character has their own theme song, their own cookie colors that they're bringing to it. But we don't have unique gameplay features, and we weren't planning on having like selectable characters for the versus mode. But we have been mulling around the idea of possibly doing like a character select screen and having some type of slight influence on the type of cookies that get dropped, or the way the cookies get cleared, or something like that. With versus, though, that's going to be a challenge to balance.
Yeah, that's again very common issue. Sort of another question we had. You kind of may have possibly answered it, but let me just sort of ask you, just to sort of maybe make sure I get it out there. Was there maybe like a problem or an issue with like maybe versus puzzle games that the team is aiming to like solve or fix with like La Patifferie?
I'm not honestly well versed enough in the genre. Like I said, the last time I was big into versus puzzlers was Neo Rage X Days, which I don't know if that's still the most common Neo Geo emulator, but I'd say probably not, because that would have been early 2000s. But no, it's mostly just like, Wendel had the gameplay idea, and I'm just like, well, how can we do this real polished? And then after that, it's like, how can I shoehorn in all these characters I want to shoehorn in?
Okay. That's good. No, it's still like a very good, well done game. Like I said this sort of. Did I say this for Miroh? I think I may have said this about one of the other games that Wendell. I think I said this about Fires of Rebellion. Like I can say this about Miroh Jr. or like even this. This graphically does not look like something I would immediately clock as being an NES game. Like, and that's probably because maybe the more famous NES games are probably sort of the earlier ones. Like maybe I guess Zelda or something like that, where they're not as they hadn't quite figured out how to be efficient with all their space and stuff, right? But this does look like this could be early SNES, maybe. Like the look on it, at least graphically, is like really detailed, really colorful. It does not appear to have like the sort of graphical limitations that an NES game is known to have.
I really appreciate that. That's probably the best compliment an NES graphics artist can get. So I like to hear it. In terms of specific ways that we go about achieving that, if we achieve it, like if I'm achieving it, the ways that I go about trying to achieve that is just using everything we can when we can. With La Patifferie, we have Wendell pulled off some amazing like animation timing. The way the cookies drop and accelerate and deaccelerate and stuff like that, that really impressed me. But then, like with our character portraits they have, with the NES, you can have backgrounds and sprites overlaid on the backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And we only have one portrait on screen at a time, the character who's currently talking, because so many assets are being used for their one portrait that we couldn't fit the other portrait on there.
Okay.
So that's the way we kind of achieve that look. We put everything in where it goes and not in other places.
All right. There's something else I was gonna ask about this because this is like sort of interesting. I guess we can see our players are kind of maybe. Oh no, this was something actually I didn't mean to ask because this sort of came up during like we were having like a casual session playing this, and I think one of the players who was goofing around with it sort of mentioned, at least in the Miroh, that the lock delay it was kind of tight. It was somewhat similar to NES, but not quite being as like not quite being as mean as NES lock delay was. Did you guys like sort of use NES Tetris or like maybe another NES puzzle game to maybe be the basis for some of the like or maybe not even the basis or foundation, but like did you I guess was it like an example for like how you would go about programming or making these other sort of NES puzzle games?
I remember us talking about it, but I don't remember Wendel's solution to it. Wendel?
I don't remember exact details, but for some stuff related to Miroh Jr., I did based on documents I found around on the internet for the Tetris. Like the way the pieces rotate, it's the what's it called? SRS or something.
Oh yeah, SRS, yeah.
I used some tables of that, except I had to adapt because Miroh Jr. also has some pentominoes, triominoes, and so on. So I based on that and made some changes for those. The speeds, like how many frames to lock and so on. I guess I did something like that as well. I don't remember now if I did based on NES Tetris or if I just tried some number and saw if it works. I don't remember now. But it's possible.
Okay. But there was like, maybe not be fully confirmed, may not be like, okay, I fully just worked this out from like whatever was in NES. Oh, nice change, you see. But there is some sort of DNA of the of NES Tris sort of in Miroh, and possibly this with how like maybe the timing or the speed is.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking about it. It was one of those things. Like I remembered. I don't know if you're familiar with another NES game, From Below, from Matt Hewson. But it's another Tetris clone. But I remember Matt talking a lot about the research he was doing into the specific, technical aspects and the implementations of modern Tetris versus classic Tetris and stuff. So I remember hitting him up and asking, what things should we keep in mind? And then I just kind of sent that list to Wendel, and I was like, if there's anything on this list, this is the stuff that Matt thought about. But I think, we were working for the compo, so I don't think a whole lot of conscious thought went into it other than this feels good. If it doesn't feel bad, let's stick with it to a point.
All right. And this is kind of we're coming a little bit on I guess our time here. We normally plot out an hour for this. It can go a little bit above, plus or minus. But I guess sort of we've kind of asked I've asked maybe a lot of the main questions about this. Let's have a fun question. Let's say you have a magic wand, right? World hunger, world peace is achieved. So you may not have to use the magic wand to solve any evils of the world. But let's say you can use it to make your perfect game, whether it be NES, PS2, maybe current gen PS5, or even the PS10 or Xbox 2780 or something, right? What kind of game would you make if there was not really a limit on, say, resources or the laws of programming, physics, etc.? And both of you, feel free to answer that, even if it's as a team together or separately on your own time or something like that.
Oh, that's a tough one. I heard you ask it on some of the other streams, and I thought I'd brainstorm an answer for it, but no. The main thing I think I would do, honestly, is I would do more of this stuff. We have games that we start every year, we have games that we finish every year, One of the things that I think makes the game appealing to work on is that we start with kind of a scope in mind, and we work toward that scope. And because we're hobbyists, I can't speak too much for Wendel, but definitely for myself, because I'm a hobbyist about it. I'm not making decisions based on what could sell, and I'm not making decisions on how long I work on something based on when it would sell. The biggest risk that I have with my back burner projects is if I leave it on the back burner too long, then my interests have shifted, and like I'm no longer the person who is making it. So either my skill level is different, so the graphics I'm making now is not what I would have been making then, or like the type of game I want to make as, you know, a 40-something-year-old is not the same kind of game I wanted to make as like a 28 or 29-year-old or an 18-year-old, you know. But Magic Wand, we'd be popping out super polished games like this every month. I'd be hitting Wendel's a month schedule, but they'd be polished like the way I see these in my head instead of the way they come out.
Okay, that's a perfectly valid answer. It could be something here, but it's always is interesting to see, like, you know, because, you know, game dev can be very difficult. There's a lot of challenges, you know, a lot of tricky things you have to do with animations and, you know, memory restrictions and things of that nature. It is interesting to hear, you know, what people would do if they had, you know, something else they could do, right? Wendel.
Like, if I work on the PC, I have infinite colors.
Yeah.
And so then every time I've started a PC game, I've started by choosing a palette, and I've never made it past that point.
Oh wow.
So if I had infinite options, I would probably not make something. I would want to make something and never could. You know, in the NES, I've got 50-something colors, arguably, and they're not great colors. But when I make a decision with the colors, you know, it's like, yeah, the colors might not be great, but it's what the NES has, and it's a good color selection to me from what's available. And it's easier to work with a smaller box of crayons than a whole palette of paint, you know.
Okay. No, wonderful. Again, great answer. Thank you for listening to the backlog to sort of possibly anticipate it. All right.
I want to put Wendel on the spot here, though. Honestly,
yeah.
What's your dream?
Oh, yeah. Wendel, what's your dream game? Right, Magic Wand, world peace and all that is fixed, so you know that's not a concern. But a game that you can make if you had no sort of restrictions.
I guess my dream game would be something to the scope of NetHack on the NES.
Okay.
Because I have been playing, not nowadays, but some months ago, I was heavily into NetHack, and I was like, I wish I could make something that gave the same experience of having that much content, lots of weird interactions going on a roguelike, fancy procedural map on the NES.
Oh, so like, I guess Rogue Lore maybe, but more advanced. Was that what Rogue Lore was, like, sort of trying to take a stab at doing something like that?
Yeah, it was very small stab, like just a pinch, not really stab, but yeah, that was based on my dream of making a roguelike.
That sounds super exciting. I could get all kinds of into that.
No, that's like, because like I've you know, and I would suggest other folks like play a lot of the stuff that Wendel has on their itch. It's like, again, you're gonna be there for Miroh Jr. My suggestions again: Fire Rebellion, banger; Radio, banger; Rogue Lore. It's in Portuguese, so you may not be able to like understand the funny line that if you go back a floor without having the magic hood, that your grandpa dies. But still, fun, interesting games, right? But that's, again, sometimes it's like something special. Sometimes folks may want to, and I don't think we've had anyone really. I've only had to ask that question maybe 4 or 5 times, and mostly it is not I've not had anyone go really super big yet. It has not been somebody to say that I want to make the next AAA like Call of Duty of puzzle games. It is generally just something around like, oh, I want to do what I'm doing now, but maybe just like a little easier, or maybe like just without having to make some of the compromises that I currently make now when making games. Right?
That's comforting.
Yeah, that's generally the answer I've gotten so far. Maybe one day somebody is going to like say, "Oh no, if I had a magic wand, I would make the next." I would make Tetris, but like as big. I would make Tetris, but as popular as like NBA 2K. You know, potentially, that could be one of the answers, but it's not been the answer so far.
Right now, I'm just imagining like PS2, Dreamcast. Let's go Dreamcast. I'm imagining Dreamcast graphics of big Tetris blocks running around in an NBA court, and that's what I want to see.
That's, I mean, goodness. I definitely want to see it happen. But I mean, as far as our stuff, that's more or less. I think we've more or less touched on all the stuff we really want to touch on. At least from our interviewer's perspective. Is there anything else maybe you want to tell the people about La Patifferie, Miroh, or any of your other projects, either NES homebrew related or not? Feel free. You have the floor, both of you.
Back to Jordan's game. I'd say if you get a chance, check out the Kickstarter for the Storied Sword. It's a Ninja Gaiden meets Batman platformer with a swashbuckling kind of Princess Bride theme. Looks pretty cool. Really, really proud of what they're doing there. And we mentioned the NestDev combo that we make games for every year. It's an interesting type of jam in that there's no window and there's no theme, and it's not really competitive. But there is a deadline every year. If you don't hit the deadline, you just keep working on it till next year if you want to. So we have all kinds of different scope projects that come up in there. So if you're looking for some super fun games to check out, go check out some of the NestDev compo games. They're at action53.itch.io.
Okay. And I put a link for Storied Sword. I don't know if you have like a link for NestDev.
Yeah. I'll drop it in
combo.
Drop it in our thing.
Oh, you know what? I forgot. Shoot. Fan questions. This was I got I don't know. I got a little nervous, so I may have probably rushed through some stuff a bit. But do we have any fan questions? Let's take a couple of those if we have any before I start rushing everybody off. I apologize so much. I know we have a few folks in the audience. So if you have any questions for any of our guests, feel free to ask them. I know I generally asked it before. I apologize. I'm generally like a lot more professional with this stuff here, but you can give folks some time to get some questions, and we can still sort of comment on the gameplay because it's
I can't see any of the streams. Is Patifferie still playing right now?
Yeah, Patifferie is still playing. It is
If we're looking for something to show off, we've got which I forgot to mention earlier. We've got a pretty strong color vision accessibility option in there. You can get to it by either pausing normal gameplay or going to the menu.
It's streaming in Discord, so you can see it that way too, instead of having to wait. Oh yeah, okay. So Tommy Attacks has a question: is there some sort of garbage system planned? So like I'm assuming like if somebody makes a match, right? Will they get like garbage or bad pieces sent to them?
There definitely is. Is that in yet? Wendel? Do we see
No,
garbage yet?
we don't have garbage implemented yet.
Okay.
We are also not really sure how exactly the garbage system would work. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I had some graphics mocked up for it, but I don't remember if we ever got it in. The little white gap between the two panes would have possibly like tiny previews of the cookies that are going to be shot in as garbage. but yeah, that'll take some testing to see how it works out. And if we can
Okay,
get it
so
going.
that's still on the horizon. All right.
One thing that I was afraid in, by the way, is mostly these garbage pieces come from like combos, chains, and stuff. I was really afraid people would never make combos. And I'm surprised I'm seeing you playing, and there's lots of combos going on, lots of chains.
Oh no, yeah. Look, we have the best 15 chainers this side of the Mississippi and that side of the Mississippi. Like again, our folks play again, Juicy and Rodney who are playing right now. Juicy would say it. Rodney would probably also cop this. Maybe not. Rodney likes to downplay both his characters and his skill in Puyo. But again, they're both very talented. They're both very good. They both kind of know the I guess sort of the science or the strategy behind building chains. So maybe they could probably be like sort of on the higher end of like a game tester to see like, okay, well these are kind of like what the really good players would do. I guess maybe if you were want to test with somebody else who's maybe less familiar with this stuff, it may not be as as advanced as this, and it's also like they kind of have to wrap their minds around how to make the basic matches themselves, right? Which took them a minute, but they're doing it pretty well. Here's one from Kayat7. What if garbage is burned and you have to match 3 or 4 of the color pattern shaped burnedness? Okay.
That's a good idea to think on.
Before you answer this, I'm just going to come on the mic and actually say I have my own question once he is done.
Sure.
Oh, cool.
So let me just know when that's wrapped up.
I'm always thinking about like palette restrictions. But one of the things that had crossed my mind was having the garbage be not cookies but just chocolate. So maybe even a wider, like easier to match as they land. But watching y'all play, that would just be a lot more cascading. I don't know. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to work out some of this stuff now that this game's back in development.
All right, I guess Juicy, I guess what was your question?
I suppose question may be a strong word, but rather thing that I've noticed. You have one of the most brutal games I've had to play here. Complimentary. Do not get me wrong. I called in Oz and Rodney a little bit early today when you gave us the demo build of this ROM, because I've never had to second guess myself on placements so much before actually committing to something. The having to make sure you share at least 2 traits between a piece to clear is the most I've thought in a puzzle game in a long time. So I appreciate it, and maybe add diagonals. That'd be neat. Because it feels
might be planned.
It feels like after you spend yourself on one big move, living through all the chaff on that can be very difficult. But I've had a lot of fun in my one day with this so far.
I've got Wendel to thank for that. The entire gameplay mechanics, his idea. From the other end of the spectrum, I haven't formally pitched it yet, but it had crossed my mind a few days ago. In that the game is coming out polished, and I'm proud of what's happening, but it is not accessible to like a much younger audience because of that. In particular, my very young child. So I'm hoping that maybe we can get some kind of like super easy kids mode in there where either, maybe the cookies are fed in a way to where all of the green ones are exactly alike, and all of the blue ones are exactly alike, and all of the orange ones are exactly alike, so that it's really easy to just match the 3 and line it up. So from the other end of the spectrum, we might have something more accessible as well, too.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, feel free.
I think the difficulty is a lot of fun. This is a different kind of puzzle game that I don't really get to see a lot. Other than diagonals, did you think of something like possibly a diamond to allow for recovery?
Oh, I guess, are you familiar with that terminology of a diamond? Because that may be like something that's more inside baseball than you're used
I'm
to.
not.
Okay, so like he's whenever we refer to a diamond piece in puzzle games, that's generally like a piece where like when you drop it on something, it erases all pieces that are similar to it. So generally like in like say Puzzle Fighter, right? If you drop a diamond piece on a red, anything that's red colored on your board is immediately, it's immediately erased. It's it's off the board, right? And it's generally used as like a sort of get out of jail free card. It's mostly I think in versus puzzle games. Yeah, like Columns and Puzzle Fighter. Like we could be here all day naming games that do have it, but it is sort of like a get out of jail free card where it's like, oh, okay, I kind of messed up and didn't really, think this build out, but this can sort of get me out and give me a clearer board to work with, right? That's and yeah, no, that's a very good question actually. I did not think of that.
That sounds super cool. Yeah, we're going to benefit a lot from having you all as play tester if you're up for it later. It's not obvious already. I can't speak for Wendel's background with puzzle games, but mine's not extremely strong. I'm definitely in the I like to play them, but I don't get into them very strongly in terms of like competitiveness and stuff. So it'll be really great to have someone well versed in the genre taking a look at it first.
I mean, tap sign. We have oh, what's the next thing? Oh, Matador Masters is like the next thing. It's a qualifier for Mag Drop. Oh, and also Chokemaker. I have to do a little bit of shilling. But yeah, no, definitely. Again, this interview doesn't have to be like the last we interact. Well, free to hang out, lean on us as a resource for anything like regarding like making a puzzle game or I guess some puzzle game terms or whatever. Oh man, oh no, Juicy, you should have put like a speckled thing on top. That's okay. It's still nice shade. But yeah, no. This has been fun. This has been great. I guess saw a little bit more. See if anybody else has any like maybe one more thing to add, but I think we can if you guys are fine, we can probably maybe Sarah closing statements and probably sign off for tonight if that's all right.
Great to me. Thank you all so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Wendell, anything else you want to say to the fans before we sign off?
No, except thanks for having me, and sorry my really bad English. I'm
Oh,
really
no,
not
no.
used to speaking English.
No, fala mais, meu amigo. Seu inglês é muito bom, né? It's fine. I've been like practicing Portuguese for like 3 years, and well, not 3 years yet, but again, you practice another language, or you do a language that's not your own. It always feels crappy. It always feels like you're missing something. And don't worry about it. You did great. You did wonderful. I'm so glad you could sort of share your expertise as a developer. Right. We're all thankful for it. And with that, folks, that will be I guess probably about the end for this episode of Margin Time. Thank you to everyone that joined us in chat. Thank you once again to Wendel, MT Graphics, and Raftronaut. Always with us in spirit, if not with us physically or over Discord. Bringing these games to us, letting us see them, and continuing to work with them. Right. We will have another episode soon. We always do this. If you want to sort of hang out with some of the Puzzle Wednesday people or some of the other devs that we may interview before and after, we have Discord. Again, we're here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Puzzle Wednesday. But that is going to be all for us. We are signing out. Join us next time when we interview the zookeeper that trains the chickens for Crossroad Crisis. See you next time.